my dad had, right away in the morning, Saturday or something, he'd plug in. He had this amplifier that he had. And he'd plug into that thing. Ba-boom, ba-boom, he'd hear it. He'd wake everybody up.
Well, hello there, my little subverts. Sure is crazy times. And you know what? 1 hour a week, I'm going to give you some stories and music to make you just forget all about all that craziness. You don't got to worry about anything. You just sit back, relax, and let me take your mind for a ride. And today, I'm going to take you on a ride with Marvin Werth. Marvin's a really great guy. I enjoyed sitting down with him, and he makes country music. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of country, but when you listen to his story in conjunction with his songs, really makes you appreciate it more. And I have to wonder, even though I really don't like Toby Keith, if I got to know the guy, maybe I'd like his songs a little bit more. Anyway, just some food for thought. Stick around towards the end. I've got a little message for you. But without further ado, please enjoy Marvin Werth. All right. I am sitting back in a beautiful courtyard on a lovely fall day here with Marvin Werth, singer-songwriter. You hail from Texas, correct, originally?
No, actually, I grew up here in Minnesota.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did, and played here extensively in Twin Cities area and all over the state. Finally decided to head out when the last child had graduated and sold the house here and moved to Texas.
Okay. I just, for some reason, I had picked up from our previous conversations that you had grew up in Texas, but
No, sir.
But yeah, big part of who you are, though, from what I understand from your music and from what I've heard. So
yeah, got to meet a lot of interesting folks and brushed shoulders with actual real stars.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So tell me, what part of Minnesota did you grow up in then?
I grew up south of Rochester, Minnesota, in a little town called Spring Valley.
Okay.
Just about on the Iowa border, but not quite.
Oh, okay.
14 miles north of there.
Now that you say that, I think I remember you telling me. So tell me a little bit about growing up. You're, what'd you say, 62?
I am 62 right now, yeah.
Okay.
Just turned the other day.
Sure. Oh, okay. Well, happy belated birthday.
Well, thank you for that.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in your family and sort of the climate of your childhood.
Well, I was the youngest of 4 children.
Okay.
And the oldest, my brother, was 12 years older than myself. So for a lot of my youth, by the time I was old enough to know anything, basically my oldest brother and my sister, who's 10 years older than myself, were already off and at college. So my biggest relationship was with my brother, who lives here in town. He's 6 years older than me, and he taught me how to play guitar. I remember the very evening I wanted to learn how to play that guitar, and we had to get the dishes finished, and then he sat down and he taught me my first chord, you know what I mean? And
Cool.
it went from there.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I really like to delve into the idea of sibling relationships because they say that your relationship with your sibling is the longest, or at least the potentially longest lasting relationship that you can have with a person, because friends move and whatnot, albeit you can move away from your siblings too, but you outlive your parents, and that's like the greatest potential for a long lasting relationship. Do you still talk to your siblings?
yes, I usually manage. I don't do it as often as I should. My mom is still living; she's 95, and I should get down to visit her. But it's it's a major undertaking to leave from here and drive 2 hours to get down there, and then there's really no place to do anything. You know what I mean? Sit there and watch your eyelids start to close. I mean, I love my mama dearly, but it's like,
I understand completely.
At 95, she doesn't have a lot of stuff to say.
Sure. Yeah, I totally understand that. My family all lives in Clear Lake, Iowa.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a 2-hour drive, and it's an all-day thing to go and visit.
Yes.
As much as me and my girlfriend like to go down and visit our families, we don't get an opportunity as often as we do as we want to with how busy we are.
You've got to multitask it with something else generally, to be able to get down there and do it, You were
Absolutely.
asking about my sibling relationships. I guess I should mention that I did shoot my brother in the back with an arrow when I was probably 8 or 9.
On purpose, or were you mad at him?
I don't
or,
know
I mean,
what the
on
heck
accident, or were you mad at him?
I was just dinking around and I shot an arrow in his direction, and well, he saw it coming evidently, and he grabbed that arrow somehow and he held it up to his back like I'd shot him and danced around. And I was crying. I must have been younger than that even, and he was just putting me on at that point, But
Yeah.
we always talk about that. but we have played music together at several different times. My brother Vernon will go out and do musical things for like rest homes and whatnot, and I have joined him on that, and we have played together at different events and things through the years. So
Cool.
and we keep a musical conversation going in that respect.
Awesome. So I guess it's obvious that music has played a big role in your life. Can you tell me a little bit about the music that has influenced you as you were growing up as a kid, and even up until now? How has that evolved?
Well, if you promise not to tell anybody about this, I just used to just love John Denver. Ooh, I said it. I still do. I think he's one of the most magnificent songwriters and singers that had come on the scene, and I was totally enamored with him. And then there was Gordon Lightfoot that came along, and I really enjoyed Gordon Lightfoot. These guys were my inspiration until I got into junior high. And then there's this band that came along called Creedence Clearwater Revival, and that
I may have heard of them.
shook my whole world up right there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden my attention turned a little bit, and my stylings on the guitar changed as well, with that little leap.
Yeah. So during that time, were they one of the only bands that were traversing that like country folk world into rock and roll? Because when I think of a band like Creedence Clearwater Revival, I'm sure you could think of maybe some since then that have sort of mimicked what they were trying to do. But I'm curious if there were any other big bands at that time that were doing what they were.
Well, just about all of them were. You think about the Rolling Stones and everybody else. They brought their musical roots from the old black blues masters that wrote this good stuff, and it's reflected in their output over the years. They have used so many of the great standards and from the early years, and that's even Mick Jagger gives his credence to those guys, and has hosted them. He had, and on stage, like Eric Clapton had. The first time I saw Eric Clapton, he had Muddy Waters with him on stage, and
cool.
And those are the kind of things that is true homage to your roots, and so I think everybody kind of made that, even the Beatles particularly, and they realized what music was about, and they all knew this stuff. They all knew it. They know who they owe their musical, their genealogy to.
Yeah, so you saw Clapton with Muddy Waters live?
Yes.
That is awesome. I would have loved to see that.
That was one of my first concerts that I actually went to. That was back in the 70s, and
cool.
I can't remember exactly, probably 75. But it was right here in town, and it was quite a show. That was really fun to see. And,
very cool.
Yeah.
I'm a huge blues fan, so that would just be heaven for me if I could take a time machine back to a show like that.
Yes, there's so many of them that are just falling. BB, just recently, and.
So how old were you when you saw that then? In 75, you must have been
20,
in your 20s?
25, I suppose.
Okay.
Something like that. 20.
Fun.
I got to count. I don't know. That's hard. That's a difficult thing.
I'm not quick enough on the math myself, but no, that's really cool. Are you familiar with Dr. John? He played with Muddy Waters a little bit too.
Yeah, Dr. John. He's a funny guy. He went out to visit with the Grateful Dead in San Francisco, and he got in there. Of course, he was a heroin addict,
Yeah.
So that wasn't a big deal to him. But he gets in there and he sees all this marijuana in there. He throws it all up because all freaked out about the drugs. They come back. Where the hell's our pot? Oh boy. So yeah, Dr. John is.
That guy's got an interesting story. If ever I got to a point where I'm interviewing big musicians, he'd be one of the top ones on my list.
You better hurry.
Yeah, no, he's an older guy, and he's probably on his last leg. Especially, the guy has probably abused his body throughout his life. And
there seems to be a lot of that, but look at Keith Richards, for God's sake.
You know, I saw a funny internet thing, and it said, we have to have a serious conversation about the world we're going to leave for Keith Richards.
That's right.
That dude just keeps kicking it.
I've seen it, yes. That's funny business there.
Yeah. So one of the songs that you have, Caroline's Heart, that's about a story from your childhood, right?
Yes.
Would you mind telling me and the listeners a little bit about that?
Well, the impetus for this was, as you listen to the song, tells about a young boy coming up into the attic and looking. And my dad had his military trunk that he had during World War II when he was in the Navy. And in that trunk, he had all of this stuff. I mean, there was everything, the whole, all the letters and the old fountain pens and eyeglasses and documents of this and that, and his patches that he wore and his different rank and insignia. And I used to love to go up there and dig through that box, of stuff. And then the one day I found this other box in there, and I opened that up, and it had a purple heart in it. And I went and I talked to my mom and says, "Oh, you can't play with that. That was for your uncle, Daryl. He was called Dutch. That was his nickname. And he was killed in France during World War II. And I got thinking about that, and I was in my 30s when I was really thinking hard about that story. And that's when I put together Caroline's Heart. My grandma's name was Caroline, and so there's where the Caroline's Heart comes from, because not only was it a purple heart, but it was Caroline's heart that was broken, and I don't think she ever really recovered from that.
Sure.
She had another son as well, Louis. He was in Patton's Armored Corps, and he made it through World War II and came home, and he had 2 Purple Hearts that he had been awarded for his action over there, and he just passed away here a couple of years ago now. So, but he, in the one line in there, because I knew Louis so well and what a good man that my Uncle Louis was, and I said, yeah, I got cheated out of knowing Daryl, and I would like to have known him.
I found it in an old trunk. It was way upstairs in an attic dim. Some pieces of a stranger's life, pieces that belonged to him. Amongst the trinkets, the treasures there, the photographs and letters bound. A small cloth covered box was there. It had a ribbon wrapped around. It was a thing of beauty that I held, so long hidden from the sun. A heart of purple with a golden bust of General George Washington. I did not know how much it had cost, or how hard it was to win, until I read the letter there. Is when my tears begin. It is with my deepest regret the words of that letter go. The letter that broke Caroline's heart so many years ago. broke Caroline's heart so many years ago. I found it in an old trunk way upstairs in an attic dim. Some pieces of a stranger's life I wish I would have known him. I wish I could have known him.
There's one cool thing about music, how we hear songs and stories that other people write, and one of the trademarks of a good songwriter is someone that can make the song or story relatable to everybody while keeping it simultaneously personal, obviously, because we're all writing songs if we're writing music about our personal experiences and whatnot. But I think it's this song for me sort of stuck with me because my deceased grandmother's name is Carolyn too.
Oh, really?
So yeah, there was a sort of kinship to that song for me. So yeah, it's a really beautiful song. It was one of the first ones that you had introduced me to when I was getting a hold of you. So
yes, that song was, I labored over that song for more than a couple of years, and my Uncle Louis, as a matter of fact, he says, "Are you ever going to finish that song?" He says, "I want to hear it. I'm not going to be around that much longer." He says, "I'd really like to hear it." So I did. I hurried up and I got it done and got him a copy of it right away.
Cool.
So he was, yeah. So that was a song about loss and what could have been.
Mm-hmm. That's sort of a reoccurring theme in everyone's life, right? I mean,
yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's what we're born to, is loss.
Right. And as I got to know you, I think, you've been through a lot, and despite all that, you seem like a really optimistic and forward-thinking guy. So yeah, I think that you personally have a lot of perseverance in that.
Well, what's the choice is either to lay down and give up or pick it up and move ahead, and
Sure.
You just got to move ahead, and I'm fixing on picking up my music and moving ahead because I'm getting tired of working for a living anymore. I'm getting too old for it anyway, So guys got to go out and do something fun. So,
Right. Another cool story that you told me was you used to follow the Grateful Dead.
oh yeah,
Back in the day.
yes indeed. It was kind of funny because I had a roommate over here in town, and we were in the music business together. And my bands that I listened to all the time were guys like Leonard Skinner and Ted Nugent and that kind of thing, that genre, Allman Brothers and whatnot. And my friend was always listening to the Grateful Dead, and it didn't make any sense at all to me. It just sounded like a bunch of racket. You know what I mean? What in the world is this? And finally one night, I don't know what possessed me, but one night I said to Greg, "Okay, here's what you got to do." Because he was, not even in the weird culture scene at all, and he liked to have a cocktail, but nothing else. And I says, "You know what we're going to do here?" I says, "We're going to go down in our studio and we're going to listen to your Grateful Dead." I says, but I had gotten a hold of some hallucinogenics, and so we took these hallucinogenics and we listened to Winterland, Farewell to Winterland. It was a bootleg copy of that particular instance. It was in what the heck year was it, like 1970 something. And that night, like Jim Morrison would say, the doors of perception swung wide open for me, and all of a sudden it came into crystalline focus what was going on with that band. And I got on the bus that night and saw my first show over here at the St. Paul Civic in 1980, and I got on the bus and I rode it until I was on the last tour with Jerry Garcia when he finally passed away.
Very cool.
And I saw over 100 and some shows during that time.
Okay. So that seems like a pretty common theme. Was that your first experience with psychedelics?
Oh no, I used to take them for fun. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I kind of look back on that, and I consider that as a sacrilegious use of psychedelics is to just go out and party.
As a
And,
party drug, right?
yeah,
Yep.
and when you're not enriching yourself with the experience, and of course Terence McKenna has spoken broadly on that subject,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and
He would always say he just liked to take a little bit of cannabis at a show or something. He didn't understand why people would take LSD and go to a live concert because it's just not the venue for that.
well, I don't know. I always really kind of enjoyed that. You know, it's
I'm sure there are people that quite enjoy it, and I've seen people have their fair share of bad experiences at a big
Oh yeah,
show
that
on LSD.
that comes you got to have your setting correct if
Yeah.
you're going to do it, because then a lot of times the Grateful Dead shows were, for me, always a very comfortable place to do it, because
Mm-hmm.
you had 10,000 brothers and sisters there that were going to look out for you if
Yeah.
you did get in trouble. That couldn't be said for a lot of other concerts.
Right.
The people just didn't have that spirit and attitude going on.
Mhm.
So therefore that was part of the community of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, and I think that's what's missing from the subculture and drugs anymore. So you think of situations like the rave culture. I'm not sure how much you know about that, but it's almost like the music is secondary and the drugs are first,
Yeah.
which that seems to be the opposite of how the
Yep.
Grateful Dead phenomenon works.
Yeah, to me that's an abuse of that kind of thing. And
Absolutely.
I've never been to a rave, but you see these kids and you hear about them, and they will actually overheat from exhaustion, and it can be perilous to your
Yeah.
health. And,
Yeah, that's where the harm reduction thing comes in. I've had a foot into that world. Not like I like electronic music. I like anything that makes me feel a little bit different and makes me forget about anything that's going on in my life. So live music of any kind, I can usually get into it. But yeah, I mean, I've seen some pretty whacked out people on synthetic drugs, and it's really sad almost, you know.
It's a scary world now, and I'm glad. I'm old. I don't do that stuff anymore, you know. But it's like I'm glad I had my good time with it when it was still relatively a safe thing, and like I say, those doors swung open, and they've stayed open for me, and I can listen to music differently than anybody else would listen to it if they hadn't had that experience. Although my late wife would listen to, she never did any of that stuff, and she enjoyed the Grateful Dead. She'd never even heard of them hardly, except for trucking on the radio.
Sure.
And by the time she passed away, Jerry passed away, she had seen 24 concerts with me. So,
Oh, okay.
but she went and she enjoyed it. Just I kind of marveled at her, you know what I mean? And it was always nice to have a den mother there who could just shepherd you back to your vehicle.
Absolutely. It is essential if you are going to experiment with those to have. Well, maybe not essential, but it could be a good idea to
have a guide.
If you don't have Thorazine, at least have a trip sitter around so that they can
Yes.
redirect you back to reality and keep you from going a little mad for a little bit. You know.
Yeah, I remember one night there must have been 18 people all joined hands, and my wife was leading everybody, and we were all just like little children, and we had no idea where the car was or any of our cars were. You know, it was like that was down in Chicago, I think, that particular time. It was like, oh boy, you know, we were just tossed, we were just wasted and having a great time, and she just led us out of there. And yeah, here's to you, Joni. Yeah, she did right by us.
Yeah.
And me.
So for as many good stories as there was about LSD within the music community, there is a bad story from back in those days, and that would be Syd Barrett. I'm not sure how much you know about that.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, the decline and whatnot of his psychological well-being, and I've heard conflicting reports of exactly what happened there, but the straw was pulled, or like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, for Roger Waters was when Syd Barrett came out on stage and he just played the same chord over and over, and he was just so whacked out of his mind that, you know, and that's an example of someone definitely abusing a beautiful thing as a hallucinogen, you know.
You know, a TLD for the stuff has never been established. for LSD or anything else. You will, but I would imagine that Sid had underlying psychological issues that were
Absolutely.
exacerbated by the use of that drug, and
Yep.
he just went out and he never came back.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and what a loss.
Yeah, because he was a brilliant guy. I love a lot of Pink Floyd's older music, and,
Yeah.
and it's a really sad story. And I'm sure anybody who's a big fan of Pink Floyd probably knows that "Wish You Were Here" was sort of an homage to
about
Sid Barrett.
if you listen to it, just about all of those old songs that Waters did and stuff, it's all about Sid Barrett.
Yeah, Dark Side of the Moon too, I suppose, probably has some common theme to that personal story.
Just about everything that they did, it could relate back to that whole unfortunate thing.
I was a big fan of Pink Floyd. I still am, but I was really big into it when I was like 16, and I had the musical, the movie.
Oh.
And I remember one time turning on the commentary on the DVD and listening to Roger Waters talk about it, and it was really fascinating to hear it firsthand account of how that character in that movie and how much that translated to his relationship with Sid Barrett. So.
That was fun. Did you ever get a chance to see any of the iterations of that band since, I saw him at the Metrodome down here some 20 years ago.
I remember him coming through town, and the tickets were too expensive for me at the time.
Well,
I would have loved to see Roger Waters, but
this was way back in the day. This was in the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, I'm 27, so
okay. Yeah, they actually played at the Metrodome and put on a heck of a show.
Mm-hmm.
Tickets go on sale this Saturday for the show that's coming up this summer. Waters is coming, so
really?
I shouldn't have said that out loud. I want to get tickets for this.
This won't be released for a while, so we're good.
Cool.
I'm still waiting for a couple things before launch, but
okay, very good. That's because I'd really like to be able to go and see him.
Yeah, no, I would too. I'm a big fan of Waters still. Even he's still coming out with good things.
He's relevant.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good music out there. A lot of good music and a lot of people, and it doesn't get heard. It's like I remember reading something Ellen Holdsworth had written. He said the phone just doesn't ring anymore. Nobody's interested in him anymore. And it's like I've got a feeling that's true for a lot of folks. And
yeah.
Especially a lot of these guys got used to living high on the hog and on how they were doing, and then all of a sudden, as they faded away, those royalties stopped coming, and then what do you do now? You're still living a high lifestyle, and they should have had enough money to have lasted them forever.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thing that's happening to the music industry right now. I'm sure a lot of those older artists aren't getting as many of the royalties as they used to.
No.
However, for new artists, it's pretty easy to independently promote and produce your own music. So the potential for making money for some of these artists, and a lot of the money isn't actually coming from actual direct record sales. It's through ad revenue, through streaming,
right,
and actual live shows, which is a great thing, because there was kind of a time in there when an artist could release studio releases, make plenty of money, and never go on tour.
Yeah.
I never listened to any artists like that, but I've heard of artists that did that back in like the 90s and early 2000s.
One of my good friends from Texas as a young woman, now I'm going to say it now, well, she's aged as long as I have too, but she's nowhere near as old as I am. Her name is Susan Gibson, and she wrote the song that the Dixie Chicks blew out of the ballpark, Wide Open Spaces.
Okay.
And Susan did quite well from that, but now she's out there just beating the road, going, playing gigs, she's doing well, but I mean, Ray Wiley Hubbard is another guy who was my neighbor just down the road from me, and he says, well, I still get mailbox money from Up Against the Wall, You Redneck Mothers, and that song was popular when I was in high school, and I don't know if you even know that one, but it's
No, I'm not familiar. This
see,
is another language you're speaking here.
oh yeah, yeah. Up against the wall, you redneck mothers, mothers who have raised your children well. He's 34 and drinking in a honky tonk, just kicking hippies' asses and raising hell. It's up against the wall. So everybody was singing that, And,
Okay.
and Ray says, I still get royalties from that,
Cool.
and because it's still being played someplace evidently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
40 odd years now. So, holy crap,
Were you ever a fan of Crosby, Stills,
Oh, yeah.
Nash and Young?
Absolutely.
They're probably one of my favorite to come out of the late 60s, early 70s folk era.
Yeah.
I've saw a really cool video of their last show, and Neil Young is just spun out of his mind. He's got cocaine hanging out of his nose and stuff. It's really funny to watch. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube or something if you look it up. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's last show, and he is wonked out of his mind.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Neil Young's a character, though.
Yeah.
His After the Gold Rush,
Mhm.
probably my favorite
Really?
record of his. Yeah, I'm a big Neil Young fan.
See, here's the deal. These guys were the soundtracks to our lives when I was young. I mean,
Okay.
these guys were what we were. This is fresh music.
Yeah.
And this is what we were listening to, and it's like, So we, I went and saw Neil Young with Crazy Horse here in town. Where the heck was that? It was downtown someplace. I can't even remember where in the heck that was. It was in Minneapolis, I'm pretty sure. No, it wasn't St. Paul. It was probably at the St. Paul Civic as well, because the St. Paul Civic used to be the place where everybody saw shows back in the day.
Okay.
And it was probably down there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a great show. He came out, anyway, he came out and he was all dressed up in he was sleeping on top of this enormous Fender dual showman, and he's got a tent over him. He's up there, and they bring the cover off of him, and he yawns and he stretches, and then he picks up his guitar and he goes into You Can't Be 20 on Sugar Mountain, and he's just playing solo, and he plays solo for the first hour of the show.
Okay.
And then they take a break, and he takes a break, and then next time the lights come on, Crazy Horse is out there, Cinnamon Girl just tears the place up, and everybody was on their feet. Oh, it was just a hell of a show, It was just really fun. So
Yeah.
those are the fun days, and getting to see that.
I've tried covering Neil Young songs before,
Mhm.
and he uses some really weird tuning.
Oh, yeah.
And I just had to give up trying to. God, what song was it? I don't remember the name of it, but it's on After the Gold Rush, and it uses some very odd tuning, and it just got to the point where I just quit wanting to keep retuning my guitar.
It's it's like I've kind of shied away from that. I might drop a D, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
do something like that. But other than that, I tend not to, because it just, some of my friends are just so versatile with it. They can immediately snap to, all right, this is geez, it's hard enough for me to remember the 15 chords that I know. No, I
Yeah.
have to learn something else. So
Right. And if you only have one guitar too, by halfway through the song, you have to.
Yeah.
You're out of tune already. So.
yeah, it's not conducive to being, when you got roadies to keep stuff tuned for you.
Yeah, I'm sure it's great.
Your
when
guitar
when you
handler
have staff.
hand you a fresh one. Here you go. It's all tuned up and you're good.
So you've got this song "Rings" that I really like too. Would you mind telling us a story about that?
Well, this is kind of a funny one. It's one of those songs that you just. I read a book by Hemingway, and it's called "To Have and to Have Not," and the feeling that it left me so empty after having read that story. That's the song that came out of it, was this young man struggling, and the bank and the railroad colluding to take away his dad's property to put their railroad through it, and they, that wasn't in Hemingway's book, but it was what my mind went to, and this guy struggling. There's no way you're going to be able to keep your daddy's farm, you know what I mean? And he said, here's, you can keep your horse, just hit the road, get out of here, because it's ours now.
Mm-hmm.
And his revenge, and I kind of like the way that was a feeling that I had, and I was really, when I finished the book, I was empty inside. It just left that a visceral imprint on me. The whole story. And you'd have to read the book
Mm-hmm.
To Have and to Have Not. and you would see it for yourself in that, because the desperation and whatnot associated there. And so that was the feeling that I had, and that caused me to write that. And I particularly like that last verse. And my friend Danny calls it the buzzard song, because there's a buzzard sitting on the pole, waiting for the bell to toll, and you can smell the oil on your gun. The rails shimmer in the sun. You smell the oil on your gun. The horse is whinny in the grove. You know what I mean? Geez, how the hell did I write that? I think back on a lot of things. I said, wow, where did that come from? It's like, I'd like to get that back again, maybe someday.
It's been 3 summers since it's rained now. The banker says he does not know how he can let you keep your daddy's farm. There comes an offer from the railroad. It's an even trade against the dead ode. You can keep your horse, just hit the road. Rings of gold and silver on their fingers, diamonds shooting fire in the sun. Railroad man is a banker's brother. They'll tell you that's the way business is done. A dirt broke in your boy at the age of 24. No time for dreaming anymore. Everything that you have done has been a game you never won. Time has come to even up that score. Rings of gold and silver on their fingers, diamonds shooting fire in the sun. The railroad man is a banker's brother. They'll tell you that's the way business is done. Buzzard sitting on a pole, he's waiting for that bell to toll. The devil standing in the shadows, he's waiting on your soul. The rails shimmer in the sun, you smell the oil on your gun. To hear the horses whinny in the grove. Rings of gold and silver on their fingers, diamonds shooting fire in silver. Railroad man is banker's brother. They'll tell you that's the way business is done. Rings of gold and silver on their fingers, diamonds shooting fire in the sun. Railroad man is the banker's brother. They'll tell you that's the way business is done. They'll tell you that's the way business is done. They'll tell you that's the way business is done.
One story that you were telling me about kind of struck a chord with me, and that was your son. You guys have done work together a lot. He did HVAC, right? You were talking about?
Yeah. He had a company.
So you tried to either start an HVAC and electrical company. Is that what you guys were trying to do, or?
No, it wasn't that. My boy got in trouble with his drugs, and he had a hell of a good company going, and ended up losing it all. And I had a company, a residential construction company here in town, and tried to reach out to him and help him, which was a mistake. And it relates back to when I was just a young lad. It was the last day of school. I believe we were sophomores. And down where my hometown is, there's a lot of iron ore pits out there. And my best friend and I and my 2 cousins and a couple of girls went out to one of those ponds and went to go skinny dipping out there, And I'm up there, I'm goofing around on the bank, and I'm and all of a sudden there's my best friend. He's out there, help, help. Well, these iron ore pits are like 12 feet deep, 3 feet off the shore, because they're just dug in with a scoop, and they're deep. If you don't know how to swim, you got no business in here. But, I didn't even think about that. Here's my best friend. He's out there just floundering around. I thought he was just kidding, Well, pretty soon here comes my one cousin. He goes jumping in there and swims out to men, and it looked like a couple of alligators fighting out there in the water. I could figure, what in the heck is going on here? Pretty soon Jack got away, and my cousin Rick goes in there, and same thing happens to him. And I realized this is serious, man. This guy's in trouble, So I dove in and went out there, and my thought was, he's my friend, And I reached my hand out to him, and I'll never forget the view from like 6 feet under the water, looking up at the sun through the water, and realized this might be my last breaths here as a living being. Because he had me in a death grip, and we were down in that pond, and he was totally in full panic mode. I used a wrestling move, and I did get away from him. Luckily, I had that command of what was going on at that point, and I got away from him. And I was so exhausted, I crawled up on the bank, and then the girls that were with us were going to go in and get him. Now, this whole thing's probably playing out over a time period of a minute and a half, and these girls are going to go in there. And I says, no, everybody join hands here. And that's what we did, is made a human chain, got a hold of him then, and pulled him onto the shore. And we left him there like a beached whale, just, heaving and gasping, what I mean? It was a pretty sobering experience. But that's kind of what happened with my son and I. I reached out my hand thinking that I was going to be able to help, and I was nearly drowned. In fact, just lost my business through trying to help him,
Yeah. I like that you have a living memory to relate to make a metaphor for that, because that is definitely what happens with our friends that and family that have drug addiction problems. I had a friend who so your son got involved in OxyContin, right? That's
that whole addiction thing.
It's a terrible drug too. I had a friend. He moved up here from Florida, up to Clear Lake, and he moved there with his grandparents and got involved into some really, really terrible pills, OxyContin and other opiate type pills, and it was a really terrible thing. He started taking advantage of his friends and family to support his habit, and it becomes a certain point where you're not just abusing your own body and destroying your own life, but you have to your addiction becomes a vacuum of resources where you just keep having to exploit people around you to support a bad habit. So yeah, I can definitely commiserate with dealing with a friend or family member like that.
They will destroy everyone around them, and you included, and either you get clean, you go to jail, or you die.
Right.
And that's where the end of that road is.
Yeah, and it's really sad too. Drugs have been sort of have come up in this conversation, and our drug policy in America, not to save us from getting too political, at the very least, we can all agree that the way that we treat our drug problem is not efficient to actually rehabilitating anybody.
It's absolutely,
and especially when the very worst drugs are legal. Somehow those drugs that your son and my friend had gotten a hold of were legal in some way. They were manufactured in a factory, and by some means of a doctor or theft or however they got a hold of them, they support a very bad habit. And the way that those fake opiates or synthetic opiates react in your brain, it is a more perfect connection to your opiate receptors than actual heroin. As terrible as heroin is, this stuff is worse.
It's engineered.
Yep.
And so gets its hooks very deeply into the psyche, and you will have a long process of getting over it. I had a good friend from Vietnam, and he when he was in Vietnam, he had access to China White, which was very pure heroin at
Yep.
the time, and he was addicted to it twice because he came home on leave, and he had to kick it because you couldn't get it. You know what I mean? And then he came back. The second time he came back, he signed up and took another tour so he could get back and get the drugs. And
Wow.
and he went back. He brought a Nikon camera case full of it back. And when that ran out, he had to kick it again. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so he went through that twice. But he finally, just 3 or 4 years ago, quit smoking cigarettes, and he had like a 2 or 3 pack of Camels a day habit, and he finally quit that. So that's how difficult the nicotine is.
Yeah, nicotine is comparable to how physically addicting.
It's more addicting, I believe, than these opiates.
Yeah.
It actually is, and it's like they want to talk about, marijuana is not an addictive thing. You might be psychologically addicted to it, but
That's
it doesn't.
absolutely it.
It doesn't
It's
make
behavioral more than anything.
Yeah, it doesn't make physical changes, and I found that I have lost my joy for marijuana in my later years. It's just like it doesn't do anything for me that's positive. It makes me stupid, and I sit there and and it's like, why did I do that? You know, a bunch of us musicians will get together, and that's the first thing is somebody starts passing a joint around or something like that, and of course you do it to be social. But in that very minute, because I don't do it all the time like a lot of my friends do, they do it continuously. And it's like, how can it be fun anymore if you do it all the time? But if I do it, I just like I'm shit faced.
You're just dead to the world.
Yeah, I'm shit faced, and I can't do anything, but they're functioning on it, you know what I mean? Because they've conditioned themselves to using it.
Sure.
And but it's a choice thing. If they didn't have it tomorrow, they might be pissed off, but they're not going to.
But they would get over it.
Yeah, they're not going to go and have diarrhea and be retching and cramping and stuff. So it's a choice thing for me. And it's like, geez, I can't do that crap anymore.
So let's get back to your personal experiences. One thing that I like to wrap up with in this program is how people conceptualize their mortality and how they've dealt with it in their lives. And I think for you, especially, I'm not sure if you've had brushes with death in your own life, but we usually experience death through other people experience or like other people dying, So the question I'd like to start with is, during your childhood, do you remember a moment when you started to sort of realize that this life is potentially finite? No matter what you feel about what happens to you after you die, we can all agree that our body is separated from that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I must have been 10 years old, possibly, when my Uncle Mike died from leukemia.
Wow.
And that was pretty shocking, you know what I mean? And it was like, what? What is this dying thing, And so that made me think a little bit, and it wasn't too much longer after that my grandfather was very ill with cancer. And my Uncle Louis, I told you about before, he was one of the people in the room, because my granddad said that there's no way I want to die in the hospital. He was just really sick with cancer. He had it in his spine and everything, and he was just...
Okay.
And he says, there's no way I want to die in the hospital, so don't take me to the hospital. I want to die at home. Well, what was everybody doing on that Sunday night? They're all sitting around in the living room while he's in the bedroom, and they're talking about what hospital they're going to take him to, And at one point he got up, and he walked out of the room, and he looked at his oldest boy that was there, and he nodded his head to him, and he walked on through, and everybody thought that's kind of funny, but he had prostate cancer and everything, so it's hard for him to go to the bathroom, you know what I mean? And he didn't want to embarrass himself and trying to stand in there or whatever. Well, anyhow, he went down to the basement where there was a bathroom down there, and the next thing he heard was he'd shot himself right between his eyes, and he says, you're not taking me to the damn hospital to die. Well, they got the last laugh anyway, because that was about 7 o'clock at night that he did that, and he did not pass away actually till 4:30 in the morning,
Jeez.
But he was out of it, you know what I mean? But he was, he put one right between his eyes,
Damn.
And otherwise, the doctor said that he would have been insane with the pain within 24 hours, So he did, in my mind, the right thing.
There are a lot of people who consider themselves pro-life, And they also include into that political idea that we shouldn't have euthanasia.
Right.
But at some point, it becomes inhumane to force people to suffer through the end of their life like that. It may be more ethical to just let people end their life on their own terms.
Yeah, I mean, we do as much for any animal. I mean, if you take your pet to the doctor or the vet and have them euthanized when they're really sick or very old, we do that for them. Why would we not do that for our loved ones or allow that to happen at their request? Not like you're going to force it on them, but I mean, if that's something that somebody feels it's time, I need to go.
Absolutely.
And they got this abstract idea that, well, God says that, your life is mine. And, well, if I take my life, well, that was when I was supposed to die then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go in there.
Yep. Yeah, no, it is. It's religious. And I would say to anybody that would have that argument that doesn't God provide you the tools to make your life and the end of your life as by proxy a lot easier if you believe in a heaven, so that your transition to heaven is a lot less painful, So.
Well, I don't know. My wife died in my arms, from cancer, and it was time for her to go. You know what I mean? She had been struggling and so sick and stuff, and it's like she got lucky. She was lucky on her way out of that one. She didn't. Some of the people that I've known have suffered horrifyingly, and there wasn't, the separation from the pain. That she wasn't really suffering pain at that point. She was so far out of it and doped up, too, But so she went out on, in God's time, you know what I mean? But at the same time, something that bothers me yet to this day was that she kept on saying, "Help me," to me. "Help me," she'd say. And I never snapped to the fact that she and I had the conversation years before that if we were ever sick like that, we'd help each other die.
Right.
And I let her down. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. And I didn't do it. And I didn't help her.
That's got to be so
I
difficult.
realized that's what she wanted, was me to put her down. And it's like, and now I think back on it, I said, Jesus, I let her down at the end worse than, but I was there for her, whatever that means, I don't know, but I let her down there, at the end of this thing, and I didn't even think about that's what she was asking until maybe it was years later, a couple of years later.
Sure.
It was only 4 years ago that she passed.
I'd never give my heart away again. I really wish I'd told you. I wish that I could hold you. I know I'll never get that chance again. Feel like I'm dying. I feel like I'm dying. Feel like I'm dying inside. Every day that I'm without you, without you. All the time we spend together, the nights we wished would last forever, the days we talked of how our lives would be. And now you're gone and I'm alone. The memories all are left to hold. Everything I see cuts to the bone. Feel like I'm dying. Feel like I'm dying. Feel like I'm dying inside. Every day that I'm without you, out you, out trace. These things I feel time can't erase. I wish that love could find us once again. I wish that time would turn around, give me back those days you crowned. I know that's just a dream that can't come true. Feel like I'm dying. Feel like I'm dying. Feel like I'm dying inside. Every day that I'm without you, without you, without you, without you. Without you.
We all do our best in that situation, though, because besides the fact that you're trying to do your best by our loved ones that are very ill, you personally are dealing with that too. I mean, so I'm sure it's really hard to think about that conversation that you guys had
Yeah.
previously about that.
I didn't even snap to it at the time, because there's so much
Right.
going on.
Absolutely.
And I didn't even remember we'd had that conversation. And then later the clarity came back, and I said, oh my God, I didn't do what I said I would do for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that is disturbing to me on that level yet, today. And so I think about that, and it's like, but as far as the realizing that your mortality, when you're a kid, you don't really get a full dose of it, what I
Right.
mean? And a guy that I worked with one time, he was retiring from his position to take a job with the post office. And he says, when I was young, he says, I knew I'd never die. He says, and I got in my 20s and almost in my 30s, I said, you know what, I might die someday, And then he says, now I'm in my 40s, late 40s. He says, I know, by God, I'm going to die. So it's something that creeps up on you, and you understand it. And
Sure.
I had an incident down in Texas that gave me some post-traumatic stress for some time. And I was driving my pickup down a road, and the damn brakes on. I don't know what the heck went on, but they totally drained the reservoir drain. I don't know if a brake line broke or what it was. It was an older Dodge truck, and anyway, there was a busy country road. It was a highway, blacktop, 60-mile-an-hour speed limit, and I'm coming down off of a hill toward it, and all of a sudden it's like there was nothing there for brakes. And for what reason, I didn't have that much time to just reach down and grab the emergency brake, and I didn't do it. And I tried to scrub off some of the speed, and I ended up hitting the fence, the wooden rail fence. And I don't recall exactly what happened during the sequence, because for some reason if I would have been wearing my seatbelt, this story would have ended differently, because I think I saw the windshield start to shatter, and I just leaned over. And when the truck finally came to rest, my object was not to go out in that road, because the semis are slamming by there at 60, 70 miles an hour all the time. And I got it onto the shoulder, and I pulled off on the shoulder, after I'd come down off this tee. And I tried to sit back, and I couldn't. And I realized as one of the rails from the fence had come through my front windshield, and it went right out my side window.
Oh, wow.
And I got away from the truck, and I had this feeling that I was going to walk up to my pickup truck and see myself sitting there dead. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
how goofy my head was at that minute.
Oh, sure.
Another car stops, and this guy had a real grim look on his face, and we walked up to the truck together, and it's like I didn't know what to say, and I'm just stunned yet. And he was expecting to see the same thing, and I called the highway patrol, and the highway patrol came and said, I thought I was seeing a fatality here, He says, did you have your seatbelt on? Oh, yeah. I wasn't going to get a ticket, but it was like.
Yeah, that's the worst thing you need at that point.
Yeah, and there was my truck with that 2x6, 14-foot 2x6 stuck to the windshield, and I would have certainly been killed.
Man.
Damn.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's your brush with death that you've had, huh?
Yeah, that was one of them. You know what I mean? And I've had several instances where I probably should have exited the building, but for whatever reason, I've been able to hang in here. Maybe it was just for me to be there for my wife while she was dying.
Sure.
You know, it might be that that's part of the plan somehow. I don't know if there's a plan. You know, I don't know. I just write little songs. You know, I haven't written a song about that or at all. It's still too spooky, I guess. You know.
Yeah.
That was probably 10 years ago. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So going back to your wife, what kind of cancer did she have?
She had lung cancer.
Lung cancer?
Yeah, she smoked cigarettes from the time she was like 14 until she'd quit. Just 1 year. You know, I said, great, we've got a chance. And she probably already had the cancer at that point, you know.
Sure.
They found it a year later. She's got a twin brother, and I said to John, I says, don't bother quitting. I says, it won't help, you know, because they both smoke like chimneys, you know.
There was some sort of anecdotal theory that I heard that sometimes quitting later in life because of the preservatives that are in cigarettes, they might actually keep you from the cancer from
spreading, at least
from growing.
I know, I've heard that too. It's like, who knows?
Yeah. I'm curious. I really should kind of read back into that and see if there's anything substantiated off of that. But yeah, my grandfather died from cancer from chewing, and he would swallow the spit. So
esophageal cancer, stomach cancer.
And it just spread, and it got really bad. A really cool story, though. He took me to Canada right a month before he passed away. I think somewhere in mid-September we went to Canada on a fishing trip with one of his friends. And,
nice.
And he actually passed away on my grandma's birthday, Halloween night.
Oh, interesting.
Later that month. And I remember visiting there. You know, the last week he was just, I think the cancer had spread to his brain, and he just wasn't there. He wasn't the same anymore. In a way, he had already passed away, or at least reverted back to a self that he hadn't been since a child.
Sure.
Because that's what it seemed like. He seemed like a toddler, the way that he was interacting with you, you know?
Yeah.
Limited motor skills, very dissociated, a sense of self. It was almost autistic and childlike. And he would just, the only thing he could communicate to you was, kiss my melon. He would want you to kiss his head.
Really?
Yeah. So that was really hard. That was a big part of my childhood, dealing with death. Just to, you know, you've shared a lot, so I figure I should put myself out there a little bit in that regard. But
well, when my father passed away, he had cancer as well, and I remember it was about 3 weeks, I suppose, before he died. I came down and took him and Mom, and we went driving around the old places where they had lived and stuff when they were first together and everything. And when we got back to the house, we pulled in there, and actually my wife was driving the car, and I was in the back seat with my dad. And my dad asked me, whose place is this? We drove into the driveway, you know, and I said, Dad, it's your place. Well, whose truck is that? And I says, Dad, you bought that truck new, you know, back in '67, you know what I mean? And so we went in the house, and he asks me, is there a bathroom around here someplace? And I took him to the bathroom. That's when I broke down in tears, you know, because he went in there, and during the time he was in that bathroom and he came out, he'd gotten it back, and he'd come out blustering and says, what's a guy got to do to get a cup of coffee around here? He says his whole personality was back like that, you know. And so that's part of that thing. My father died on his birthday, you know.
Oh, wow.
It's like, how do you wrap that package up like that, you know?
Right.
It's a Taurian thing, I guess, you know what I mean? But yeah, he was a musician. He used to play on the radio back up in International Falls area.
Oh, cool.
When he was a young man. And there's a picture in my first record, which I don't even know if I have any copies of anymore, and it's got a picture of him sitting there with the guitar, and that's it was dedicated to my father, who, you know, when my brother taught me how to play guitar, I used to sit back in the side bedroom and kind of play along by myself while my dad and my brother would be jamming out in the living area, and until I got good enough to actually sit in, you know, I was back in the wings, so to speak, you know, until I was good enough at the guitar to actually come out there and participate, you know, in that. So my father was a man of music, and he enjoyed it. Yeah, so
music definitely
Huge.
runs deep in your
Yep.
blood, huh?
Yep, my house was always full of music, so.
Cool.
And my dad had, right away in the morning, Saturday or something, he'd plug in, he had this amplifier that he had, and he'd plug into that thing, ba-boom, ba-boom, you'd hear it, he'd wake everybody up, nobody was going to rest, he was going to start playing guitar at 6 in the morning.
Sure.
He always did, just figured
Cool.
you had to be up at 6, There
Yeah.
was no good going on. Daylight in the swamp, he'd holler up,
Right. On that note, I think we'll wrap up.
Very good.
You were talking about before we hit record that you're planning on, or at least that you've been musing recording another album, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm starting to gather material and starting to think about completing some projects that I've been working on, just parts and parcels of things. And I'm thinking that this winter I'm going to get a break from working, and I'm going to probably concentrate on trying to do that. And I'd love to go out and play this stuff, but it's like trying to find an opportunity up here. It just isn't a very welcoming place.
Yeah, you were mentioning that, and I can see what you mean. With younger guys, a lot. My friends are in a band, and they play with people, of our age range, and it seems pretty hospitable. But I guess I don't know for guys that are kind of playing the music that you're trying to go for. And the sort of demographic and whatnot,
Yeah.
if maybe it would be not as welcoming.
Yeah, it's difficult, to find it. Like I said, I'm more of a folk type artist, than anything else. So I've had forays. Some of those songs are kind of rock and roll that I sent you, and but it's like one guy with the guitar, it's like hard to pull off a rock and roll tune. You know what I mean? Well, sometimes you can, but it's like. I do blues things as well, you know what I mean. But I can fill up about a 4-hour a night,
Okay.
My catalog of music is vast, and I've been able to make these songs. People do enjoy it when they do hear me play. They're often surprised, and like, who's this old guy? And all of a sudden, holy crap, who is this old guy? You know what I mean? And it's like I've never been anybody. I had one hit down in Texas, and that was it. And that was a niche song, and it had to do with a particular event that was going on, and we didn't even have that on this little project, but that was my little claim to fame. That's how I got to rub elbows with the people like, even Lloyd Maines, Gurf Morlix. Now, if you look up Gurf Morlix, he's worked with everybody. Warren Zevon and John Lennon and everybody, you know what I mean? It's like, I got the privilege of being able to hang out with these people and do things, because of my song, that ended up, if your song didn't hit on the radio, you ain't shit, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
And so I got those doors were open to me, to be able to get into those circles and be at music festivals with these people.
Right.
And to meet them and see what's going on with them. And it's the same thing that's going on with us, only they're a little luckier or did a really excellent job of songwriting. And
So you were saying that you were like flipping through the radio channels and heard your song at one point too?
Yeah, I didn't have to
That'd be a
flip.
really cool feeling.
I didn't have to flip through it because I always had my radio on that one particular channel, and I was what the hell, It's just,
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, it is. and Bobby had taken it up and given it to Sam Allred, and there was a local guy at the New Braunfels station. I don't think he cared for me much, but he was forced to play it then because KVET, which is a big station down there, was playing it, and then KFAN over west of us started playing it, and I understand there was like 14 different stations that picked it up. For that summer, it was funny, because it made fun of the situation about being naked on the Guadalupe River, and the second verse is there's, how in the heck does that go? I don't remember anymore. It's like there's folks along the river with two-way radios. No, there's cops along the river to make sure you're wearing clothes. They looked inside my cooler for containers made of glass, but I know those sneaky devils was looking for my grass. Thank God they're not the sharpest of the knives found in the drawer, but you still can't party naked on the Guadalupe no more. And how many times I've played places and there's deputy sheriffs in the crowd, and I'm singing, thank God they're not the sharpest of the knives found in the drawer. Geez, I says, this is awful, but that was pretty funny. That was a fun chapter in my life. That was like 2000 when that happened. And,
Okay.
So it's like, wow. I was just looking at that record the other day, and it was copyrighted in 2000, and it's like, oh my God, that was that long ago. Yeah. What
Wonderful.
fun we've had over 16 years, Are we still
All right.
rolling or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll probably edit out some of
Okay.
this, but
Well, as long as you're doing that, let me say when we were talking about the drugs, remember this band Steppenwolf?
yeah.
Remember that song? It was actually a Hoyt Axton song. It's called "The Pusher," and my friend's mother was so upset because he says "God damn" in there 17 times. You know what I mean? God damn the pusher, man. And it's in one of the verses. God knows I smoked a lot of grass, and I popped a lot of pills, but I ain't never done nothing that my spirit could kill. You know what I mean?
I think I know that song now, or
Yeah.
at least have heard it now that
Yeah.
you say that verse.
And you think about these terrible drugs, you know what I mean, that are around, and it's like, sometimes I feel guilty about it because I openly used them, you know what I mean, in front of my kid, and so he got the idea it was okay.
Oh, okay.
I think, but I handled my drugs, the drugs handled him. I always knew to
Right.
stay away from the opiates.
Sure.
Nothing that's going to addict you, you know what I mean? And it's like he got sucked into there, and I feel bad about that because I did not persevere in a way to keep him away from it. And I remember growing up, geez, it was just a drag, growing up religious, and everything. And it was like somebody's foot was always on your neck, you know what I mean? And it's like I rebelled openly against that.
Yeah. Sure.
So that was just a little quip I wanted to throw in there since we'd covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Well, again, thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you,
And,
Trey, for taking the time.
All right. Starting to get a couple more listeners here and there. But I would really appreciate it if all of you out there would go and share this with people who like music, people who like hearing interesting stories, everybody that you know. Not to put you in that awkward position, but please just share the shit out of this for me. It would really, really help me out. If you could also subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, go on iTunes even if you're using Android and give me a 5-star review, leave some nice words. I have not gotten the website up yet, as I mentioned in my last episode, but I plan on doing that this weekend maybe, so keep your eyes out. Until next time, subvert, subscribe, and subsist, my friends.